Well, Tesla's a very interesting story this week. I mean, it had 11 they had 11 straight days of their stock climbing, which is interesting because at the same time they were announcing, yeah, they're not going to build that real small vehicle they were thinking of, but instead they're going to use that platform for their new auto taxi. Okay, but then they just announced Thursday that the taxi is not going to come out anytime real soon, but probably in the fall or even the winter.
And that broke the streak of
The
a
streak.
real hot run for the stock price, which is interesting because Elon Musk putting something off is hardly news, let's be honest.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Busy time in this political sphere these days.
Yeah, yeah, very much.
Uh, are you involved in any of that, or you're still covering your beat?
Still covering the beat, but you can't be in a newsroom and not notice all this
Yeah.
stuff. And as a journalist, not to mention a one-time political science major, this is just an incredibly fascinating time. And I've never seen anything like this. And we are far from done with whatever is going to happen, I have a feeling.
Well, as a history student, you always wish you were part of great historic events. Then you find yourself in the thick of one, and you go, "Ooh, maybe that wasn't a great wish." So we'll see what happens.
Right.
Uh, okay, let's get on this quickly. Uh, First up, I want to do a little bit of economy. I hate doing this economic stories, but it's hard to escape them. We got some American consumers got some more encouraging news on the inflation front. Prices have slowed. The consumer price index dropped 0.1% in May. That's a great sign to bring down inflation as well. So falling gas prices have also helped, which is interesting in the summertime. We don't see that very often. So unemployment still causing people to be nervous, especially with that new equation that was formulated, suggesting that we could already be in a beginning of a recession without even knowing it, as if unemployment rates don't start falling. But it's nice to have inflation cool, and it raises the odds that the Fed's going to actually cut interest rates probably in September, if not sooner. We've been waiting for that for a while.
Right. These are all incremental moves. I wouldn't get too excited about them, but the idea that prices and inflation are slowing is good news. Even as wages have been going up, that's good, sort of a double bit of good news for the economy. But we talk about how the economy affects politics, and are prices slow enough and low enough for people still to feel that the economy is overall in good shape? We who study the economy would say, wow, it's really doing well. We've seen job growth. We've seen no recession. We've seen a slowdown in inflation. But at the same time, any of us who look at our grocery bills are still going, ooh, that's high, or who buy lunch somewhere and say, boy, it's $25, what used to be $15 or $17. And I don't know how that goes down when even good news on top of good news in the economy, as we've had, is still fairly incremental.
And with the usual perversity that we see in the stock market, the Dow this week is wavering. The other indicators are also falling today with a serious sell-off in tech, which has been booming while we've been worried about everything else. Now, all of a sudden, tech had a big steep fall off at the end of this week. And I suspect it's more profit taking than anything else. I don't see anything structurally wrong in tech right now.
No, I mean, how can you say that anything's structurally wrong when the NASDAQ is at 18,000?
Yeah.
Dow scraping close to 40,000. I mean, these are record numbers. S&P just set a record. I mean, these are really strong numbers. And I think at some point, especially if people are worried about paying their mortgage or paying rent or whatever it is, they're going to have to take some money off the table. I think that's very natural. And we still haven't seen a prolonged sell-off in such a long time, since things briefly shut down during the shutdown in 2021 or 2020. And we've been on quite the roll since then.
I think NVIDIA shareholders are probably looking in the mirror and beginning to see a bit of a nosebleed. I would think that, how long can this company defy gravity? And maybe this was the moment. It's 103 outside. And you go, that's it. I'm gonna get some vacation money and sell a little bit of that NVIDIA stock.
Yeah, I mean, remember, they just got 10 shares for every one they held previously, and every one they held previously soared over the last few years. So this is a company absolutely ripe for profit taking that's still, depending on when you all are listening to this, likely in the top 3 most valuable companies in the country.
Yeah, no question about that. Okay, took care of the economy. We'll know more. We'll know more what the Fed does in a few days here, but I think everybody's so focused on politics that the big news is going to come next week in the aftermath. Okay, I picked this story because it's so uniquely Silicon Valley. Besides every car being a Tesla, every other car out there is a Beamer. And BMW America just recalled almost 400,000 vehicles with a real pleasant image that if you take the replacement better steering wheel, if the airbag inflates, explodes, it will shoot sharp metal fragments into the driver. Okay, you read these things, oh, bring your car in because it's got a problem. We're doing a recall. I would think that particular description would get every BMW owner, even if they're not eligible, down to the dealership right now.
Yeah, I remember this.
And for once, actually driving very cautiously and slow.
These things happen. The car I had last, it was not a BMW, it was a Honda, but it was part of that whole airbag recall thing. Remember when all those airbags came back? And that's what they said. Right. Get here fast because your airbag can do serious damage to you. And those things are real and they have to fix them. And that was a huge problem. And it's sad to see that pop up yet again with something that's supposedly there for safety. But yeah, get that swapped immediately.
Yeah. The Fed is announced that it's going to provide $1.7 billion in grants to help revitalize 11 shuttered at-risk auto manufacturing assembly facilities. We're talking mostly electric cars that the Fed is going to try to shore up these factories. Now, obviously, it's an election year, so these are in 8 states. A lot of them have large union membership, also working in auto plants. Detroit's the big recipient. But it's interesting that they decided that the market is not as healthy as it might have seemed, and they're going to prop it up for a while to get it over the hump.
Right. And I think that's how it's going to have to be. I mean, Tesla is such an outlier in terms of selling all these cars and becoming such a well-known EV brand. Even the more established companies that, remember, were supposed to eat Tesla's lunch right out of the gate have absolutely not done that. They've struggled with pricing. They've struggled with service. They've struggled with parts. Obviously, the whole industry struggles with charging and access and all that. And so, like with many big technological switches, whether going more environmental or whatever, the government is likely to get involved. And I think that will happen here. I'd like to see the government also get involved with more high-speed chargers because that's really what we need. Because the big impediment, even as prices come down impressively on many of these EVs, is even in a fast charging world, you need close to 30, 40, maybe even an hour to charge an entire car. And in no gas station do you need more than 5 minutes once you get to the pump.
And that's when you go in. Such a big deal. And that's when you go in and get a candy bar too.
Exactly. That needs to change so that people can just get back on the road faster with their EVs.
Well, Tesla's a very interesting story this week. I mean, it had 11 straight days of their stock climbing, which is interesting because at the same time they were announcing, they're not going to build that real small vehicle they were thinking of, but instead they're going to use that platform for their new auto taxi. Okay, but then they just announced Thursday that the taxi is not going to come out anytime real soon, but probably in the fall or even the winter.
And that broke the streak
That
of
broke the
a
streak.
real hot run for the stock price, which is interesting because Elon Musk putting something off is hardly news, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, every release that man has talked about has been delayed. Also, I don't even know that the robotaxi was such an integral part of Tesla's recent stock run-up. I think it was more that it's selling a lot of cars. I don't know, maybe the shareholders approving Musk's pay package, whatever it was, it really sent the stock on a big run, whereas robotaxis have not, as even a niche industry, proven to be all that successful or profitable. So I don't really know why this
Well, why do you
made the
think it
stock go
did?
down so
Why do
much.
you
And
think Tesla did so well for they seem to be contracyclical to everybody else? Or is that the reason that everyone's starting to think they're going to be the last man standing because they've got the secret sauce? And even Detroit can't build these things. They're begging for help from the feds.
right, even as EV sales slow down, Tesla sales beat expectations. And that sent the stock on a run. I think knowing Elon Musk is going to be in place because he'll get his money sent the stock a little higher. Also, I think all of these things sort of combine. And I really just didn't see the robotaxi as making investors salivate, other than just the sort of geek factor of having more Teslas on the road. But I think it was just the idea, like what you said, even the other car companies are saying we're going to pay Tesla for the charger use. So all the money in this industry seems to be rolling Tesla's way, and that's kind of a big difference. And that made, I mean, a couple $100 billion of value in the stock price.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. More money to invest on new products,
Yeah,
or more money to pay Elon's bonus.
or that, yes.
That too. Okay. I remember when Silicon Valley Bank crashed and then First Republic crashed, and a lot of people said, see, this is why we've got to get out of traditional banking because they're not reliable anymore. Let's get into fintech. Well, we know what's happened in the last, we didn't even know about it. I mean, I've only started to see the stories recently that people can't get their money out of banks right now that are related to
Well,
fintech.
yeah, one credit union in particular, Patelco, and then right because of the banking sort of system that went down. This is a real problem, and I think it's a real problem. I don't think people are taking this seriously enough because think about it, Michael. I mean, your kids are a little older. Mine are, sort of in that teen to 20 range. They're not about to ever write a check. They don't need to go pull cash out of a bank. They're all about apps and these things that send money automatically. And I use them too. They're convenient, but at least I have a backup. If young people can't get their money out of banks because the software is down or that sort of thing, they're just going to flat out lose confidence in these institutions. And the idea that the technology is the problem really targets those who are young and just getting into the finance system and developing their habits. And they're going to say, what, I can't get money from a bank when I wanted to? Even my old parents and grandparents could get money when they wanted to, but the system is letting them down. And I just wonder if they're going to look for other ways.
Yeah, Willie Sutton, America's greatest bank robber, he had to go into a bank and pretend to have a gun and risk being shot, and got arrested and went to prison multiple times. And I believe he only got $3 or $4 million total. And that was over the course of 20 years. The thing that we were learning, as with, crypto, huge amounts of money get transferred really, really fast. And if something happens to it, which is the case, happened to Yato and Juno and Copper, among other 100,000 customers out there, it disappears in a day because it never really physically existed. And you can't turn it into physical reality or even move it somewhere because no one knows where that money went. I mean, it's wild. And
Well, and I think,
it's another glimpse of the future, I think.
right, but also a lesson to pass down to young people is the lesson of the FDIC. Do not put money into an institution that is not backed up by the FDIC. And that was the lesson of crypto. And people haven't really learned it. They're still getting into crypto by the ton. But if that money goes away, it's just not backed up by the federal government. It's gone, as opposed to the money that you might have in a bank or a credit institution.
And the reality was, when the two banks went down, you were insured by the FDIC, but the FDIC, backed by Janet Yellen, paid more than you were covered for. I mean, if you had $1 million in there, they gave you that extra amount that you lost as well. I mean, the guarantees are pretty rock solid, and they made a point of making it rock solid. Well, with fintech, they're not there at all.
Right, and that itself is a lesson as well. Just the transitory nature of this versus the boring, always there, and backed up by the federal government nature of the banks.
Sometimes boring's good.
Yes.
And the interesting thing about this, it wasn't the people with the money, it was the intermediary firm, Synapse, that was acting as kind of the broker in between. And they were a 10-year-old firm. They looked like they had a lot of partnerships. They looked pseudo-stable. And I guess you just can't even trust that. So, okay, next. Trying to think. Oh, there's a good story out there. I'm looking through pages and pages of stuff on Synapse. By the way, the senators are getting involved now, urging owners, partners, and VC backers of Synapse to restore the money. So I'm sitting on Sand Hill Road, and I put some money into Synapse 10 years ago, and now I'm being asked to return $50 million to people that had holdings in the company in Nebraska. I'm sure they're real happy about that on Sand Hill. Okay, let's go. I want to do a product. And, the company that doesn't get enough love, I think, because they're always an also-ran, is Samsung. They're basically the Google Apple Watch. They're the Android version, and they're always kind of a little behind, and they're trying to have special features, and everyone just sort of looks at them as, the little brother, and Apple owns the game. Well, Samsung's trying to do it again. Okay, they came out with recently a watch called the Galaxy Watch FE, a low-priced one, going for the price one, but they just came out this week with the Galaxy Watch Ultra. Okay, and the reviews are quite good, but every one of the reviews says it's basically an Android Apple Watch. They just can't get past that image. And the thing is, it's like Samsung has given up on trying to be different. Apparently, it even looks like the Apple Watch. It operates like the Apple Watch, and it's $649. So I guess that's the appeal. But it's like, okay, we're tired of trying to be creative. We can't do it like Apple. So here, have an Android Apple Watch.
Well, a couple of things. So I watched the Samsung rollout on Wednesday from Paris. It was in Paris. I was not there, obviously, but watched it. That's more expensive than a lot of Apple Watches, by the way. You can get an Apple Watch for much less than that. But yeah, the products are starting to look really similar. But Samsung did a couple of things to differentiate itself. And one was it's got a flip phone. Apple doesn't have a flip phone. We haven't seen a flip phone in quite some time in the wild, since like the Motorola Razr. It also has a fold-out phone. Now, the flip phone starts at somewhere around $1,100. That's top of the line for most iPhones. The flip-out phone, the two-sided thing, comes in at like $1,800. So you can spend a lot of money on a Samsung phone that will look different and maybe, wow your friends. Also, in the wearable market, Samsung now has a ring. It's called the Galaxy Ring.
Well, let's go talk about that next.
Yeah, okay, because that was something that really stood out simply because you're right about the Apple stuff. This is something Apple doesn't have. And if Samsung manages to sell millions of rings, is that going to be its own sort of niche category? Whereas we've seen Fitbits and watches and things like that from both Apple and Android but no rings. I mean, Aura is out there, but that's kind of a niche product.
Yeah,
It'll be
there's some
interesting
other,
to see if one of the big
Aura, and there's a couple others that are trying to do it, but apparently this thing it looks good. It has a lot of features. I'm looking at the features here, and it has a optical heart rate sensor, accelerometer. None of that's new, but skin temperature sensor. You'll be able to track sleep, heart rate data, and activity. And it keeps going on. There's several other features too, but it's really impressive, and it'll giving you a daily what kind of state of health are you in, and all of that kind of stuff. It's not hyper expensive. It's $399.99. Yeah, it seems to me like it just created a new market. There's been the pioneering little firms, and we see ads on TV and all that, but this is the real deal, and there's no competition for it. And I thought to myself, my damn phone keeps getting bigger and bigger, in my pocket. I don't carry around a laptop everywhere, and to have this or a watch even around your wrist, you can have this thing on your finger and not think about it. It weighs just a couple grams. This could be the next real wearable.
It could. The niche companies you're talking about that are involved in rings are niche for a reason. Not a whole lot of people buy rings to wear in this way. But as we've talked about with Apple and Samsung deserves to be in this conversation, there are two companies that can make something new become consumer products, and those are Apple and Samsung. And Samsung is giving it a shot with the Ring. I predict at some point we will see a very geeky couple get married and give each other these rings. And that's what they'll wear.
I hadn't thought of that. That's brilliant. Yes.
And yeah, they'll be united in love and data. And that's how it's going to be. And I look forward to that nerdiness. But really, if this works and people do get the, I don't know, satisfaction or whatever that they get out of a wearable, then maybe this could be the next healthcare thing. And that's what we need. When you look at the Apple Watch and its potential, people want to add more things to it as far as tracking health. And if this Ring does take off, I think it will be the same thing. People have to be used to something kind of new. I mean, many of us wear rings if we're married or have a little bit of jewelry, but this is something extra in a data way that I think adds on in a way that a watch doesn't necessarily, because people wear a lot of watches. So this is kind of new, but
you take off your watch.
If anyone can do it
at night. You take off your watch at night before you go to bed.
Absolutely.
This is on your finger all night. If you wake up in the middle of the night,
right,
you can actually check your status,
Right.
And it's going to get, I think the most brilliant part of this is the simple thing that says, you're good, you're not good. I mean, at 4 a.m., that's all I really want. Am I going to wake up in the morning or not? Boom.
Right. Well, that's taking it to an extreme, but right. I mean, I am among those who enjoy tracking my steps, but I'm not going to wear anything to bed. And so I'm not going to track my sleep. But if the rings catch on, people will be able to say, this is easy. I'm used to having it on my finger. And now I know my sleep patterns are whatever. So this may move the wearable category forward. It'll be interesting to see.
I'll give these guys credit. They've had bad news about some of their products. They've always been doing an also ran. And now they actually have broken out with maybe a killer product. They didn't give up. Kudos to them. So anyway, finally, July 16th and 17th is Amazon Prime Day. Whatever money you still have left, get your deals quick, folks, while you still can, while you can still afford them. And that's it. That's it for now, folks. You can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can see Scott on Facebook and X, and of course, almost every weeknight on NBC Bay Area. And hear me regularly on the BBC World Radio show, Business Matters. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.